Assalamu alaikum everyone, and Ramadan Kareem. My name is Ashante, and today I am going to be talking about my Muslim convert revert story, the biggest things that brought me to Islam, and what you can expect from this channel. So I am 22 years old. I grew up in the United States. I'm currently pursuing a master's, and I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit today about my convert story in case anyone is going through a similar thing, is considering it, has converted and still feels a little bit unsure or lost. So my story doesn't have like any big major moments, I would say, that brought me to Islam, which I think is okay. The most important thing is that I am. I think for me what has been more important is kind of the what comes after. But like I said, if this is something that interests anyone who is maybe still searching or unsure, like I hope this just adds another story for you to hear. So I grew up Catholic, but basically like your C&E Catholic, going during Christmas and Easter. I never really felt called to the religion. I would go to church, but everything always felt a little fake to me. What I would notice is that there would be these people, and some of them, Catholics, I don't want to generalize, but the Catholics that I have met, some of them hadn't even read the Bible, and for me that was a big thing. Like, how are you going to believe in this stuff and not really know like what it is you're believing in, or like just believing what someone else says and without doing your own research? And the second thing was that there would be so many people who would say they were a Christian, but I never felt like their actions or their attitudes matched it, and so that made me very cynical. So I was also always someone who was interested in history, so I would read all about Christianity and like the history and things that happened, and I just felt very unhappy with it. I never felt like I belonged to that. I didn't kind of want to support that establishment. And so I would always argue with my parents and give them like all these reasons of why I shouldn't have to go, and like things I didn't like about Christianity. So by the time I was about 13, they just told me that I could stay at home. And for the longest time, that was that. I didn't consider myself a religious person. I didn't think about it too much, probably until I got to high school, where I did start feeling like a little bit like something was missing, but it never really bothered me too much. I think that when you're young, you can just get caught up in like all these other things that you don't really think about the bigger questions. And so when I got to college, that is when I really started to feel like, okay, well, what am I, like I felt like I was missing something, and I didn't know how, I guess I didn't know what I wanted to be my life, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like Islam gives you a lot of guiding principles. It kind of gives you like a pathway to like a successful life, and that is something that I didn't really feel like I had the tools or the knowledge to kind of like grasp yet with just being Christian. And so I took a world religions class, which was very fascinating, but even when Islam came up, I always thought it was very interesting, but I didn't really think much about it. The biggest factors for me then were, first of all, in my last year of college, I started working at a Muslim civil rights organization, and that had a big impact for me, not just because the work, which was fantastic and is still fantastic what they do, but also because I was coming into almost daily contact with Muslims, to where before I had, seen Muslims on campus but never really been friends with any. And I just remember being like so in awe about their character. Like, they were so humble and kind and compassionate and just like driven by the sense of justice. And that was something that like totally raptured me. I was like, how do I become like that? And I think one important thing for me to note here is that even at my time there, which was about a year, like no one did dawa, like no one was actively like come here, like learn about this. Just their actions alone were so powerful enough for me to want to investigate that religion more. And I think that is something that is so beautiful. That is something that I definitely strive for. And I just want that to be like a point, like you never know like what your actions can do. And I think that that's a very important part to start thinking about, like when you become Muslim. And so after about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months, I asked someone for a Quran, which they did give me. And so I started reading on my own, but I didn't really ask anyone. I didn't really tell anyone what I was doing. And so that went on for a little bit, but it was like a very slow process. It wasn't like I read a page and was like immediately sucked in. I would say the process leading to my decision probably took about a year and a half. Because I'm someone who, or I'd like to think that I'm someone who's very methodical and I like to think things over, and I didn't want to jump in and decide that this was going to be for me and then back out halfway through if I found something that I didn't like. But alhamdulillah, that was never the case. So coming back to the second biggest factor for me was probably YouTube, which sounds really funny, but I watched a lot of YouTubers who necessarily weren't talking about anything religious. Some of them were, but it was just fascinating for me to see people kind of in my age range, like living their lives as Muslims. Again, coming from someone who grew up in a semi-religious household, but like we were not very religious. So it was just interesting to see like how your life could be with religion and like how diverse and like full their life experience still was. Like it didn't hold them back from anything. So if you guys are interested, I could totally do a video about some of the top YouTubers who actually brought me to Islam, but like mind you that they're not explicitly talking about religious matters. There's only one who did, and they made one video that the moment I heard that analogy, it like basically changed my whole sense of urgency. Again, so if that's something you guys are interested in, comment below. And then the third biggest thing was just like reading itself. Reading like Quran, Hadith, and again watching videos on YouTube. I felt like there would be times where I was like unsure, where there'd be some passages that were kind of testy, and I would feel myself kind of like resist against it. And I was like, no, like this just cannot be, like I don't believe in that. And so then I would have to like go and like search and kind of find out the background, maybe find out the historical context, listen to some speakers speak about it. And once I was like sure that for like the main things that there was nothing really that I was missing, I was like, okay, like I felt ready. And I just remember like when I would sit there and like listen to the Quran, and it would just be such an emotional experience because you just felt so touched and like so peaceful, and everything just felt right. And the more that I would have these experiences, the more I was like, well, I have to do this now, like I have to become Muslim. So after a year, I basically stopped working at the organization because I moved to Germany to study a master's, where I actually am now. And I did my Shahada here. Basically, no one in the US knew about this at the time. I wasn't very open about it because for me, like converting was like, I knew that I was seeking something like inwardly to help with my spiritual growth, and so it was a very personal thing, and I needed to feel like I was kind of on a solid foundation as a Muslim before I started to tell other people. So that process took about 6 months because I was still going to school and working, and I had to kind of learn how to be Muslim at the same time. So I remember just prayers sometime taking like, you know, a half an hour trying to read and remember the positions, and not even trying to memorize anything at that time because that came later. And so this whole process of like trying to learn as much as I can while still going to school drew out that process. But finally, at about the 6-month mark, I reached out to a girl in my program who was Muslim, and she is still a very good friend of mine. And I told her, I was like, look, because she wears the hijab, I was like, look, I converted. Like, I know this might not, it might not look like it, but like, I'm Muslim. And she was like very welcoming, and I'm just so grateful for her friendship, because she immediately brought me into this other group of Muslim girls. So I started to feel like a sense of community, and just like strengthen that like Muslim identity, because not being visibly Muslim, like not wearing the hijab, there were still things that I was striving for to be Muslim, and having that sense of connection is a very big thing. So for anyone who has converted, and even if they've done it in secret, I would say just finding friends who will accept you the way you are and still bring you into that sense of community is such a big thing. It strengthens your deen so much. It strengthens your man so much. So that's definitely something that I would look into. But obviously only when you feel comfortable. No one pushed me out into that space. I felt ready, and that's when I started to like seek other people who could help me. And so after that is probably when I told my family. And now, like I said, it's been a little under 2 years, and I still have not told all my family, just because there are some family members who are very much against it, who are very xenophobic, very Islamophobic. I come from a mixed family, so it's a little bit challenging sometimes, and if anyone wants a video on that, I would be more than happy to talk about that. But I did tell my immediate family, I told my closest friends, and they were all very supportive, alhamdulillah. Like, there were some people who were kind of like unsure. I have a cousin even who would ask like, oh, is this like extremism? Is it because of a guy? Like, all the stereotypical questions you think you might hear. But so far, everyone who's known has been pretty accepting about it, and so I'm very grateful for that. But I would say now much hasn't changed. I think partially too because like I haven't like been very visibly Muslim. I still feel like with family I do kind of like hold back, which is like a very sad thing, I think, especially during times like now, like in Ramadan, because being Muslim can be like such a source of like peace and joy, and you just like feel like this overwhelming like happiness. And then if you run against people who have like these negative associations with it, you feel yourself kind of like holding back and kind of maybe still like softening your approach, if that makes sense, maybe not talking about it as much, which is something that I'm still working on. But that is basically my story in a nutshell. Like I said, there was no major, there was not really a major life decision or life event that brought me to Islam. But I do feel like the most important thing for me is like after, even now, I still feel like there's so much more I have to learn, like there's so much to do. And that brings me to my channel and what I want it to be about. So since YouTube was such a big part for me, I wanted to make sure that I gave back in a way and provided another source for anyone else who still might be searching, who maybe has converted but still feels unsure or hasn't told their family, or like whatever the case may be. So I'm going to try to tailor my videos more towards reverts, but I'm open to talking about a host of issues, so if anyone has any suggestions, please leave a comment below. I'm also someone who lives with social anxiety, which has also created a little bit of a challenge as far as integrating into like a new community, like making new friends as a Muslim. So that is definitely something that I will be talking about. Some other ideas that I had were talking about Ramadan as a revert, which I know is really late, so I might push it off until a little bit later for the next one. and other tips that I've gathered along the way on maybe like how to memorize Quran or how to like memorize Arabic, especially not speaking the language, and just other parts of like becoming Muslim identity wise, maybe my experience, any questions that you guys have for me as the time goes on. So that's what you guys can expect from me. I would love to hear your comments, so please write them below. I'm so excited to be engaging with you guys and sharing here now, and I will talk to you next time. Assalamu alaikum.